We have a special guest with us. He's been with us for a couple of days. This is Mr. Joey Ford. He comes to us from Chicago. He is a 1976 graduate of Central Missouri State University, which is my alma mater. Been doing a lot of directing throughout his career. I'm going to let him talk a little bit more about what he's done, how he got there, some of those types of things. We're going to visit for a little bit. He's got something he'd like to show you, and then we're going to open it up and you can ask questions. I will pass the microphone around because otherwise with the video they won't be able to hear it. So please welcome Joey Ford.
Thank you.
So let's start off. Tell us where you are now and how you got there.
I live in Chicago. I work for a company called Warner Brothers, and I direct a daytime syndicated court show called Judge Mathis. I've been doing it. We've been doing the show since 1999, so I've been there since '99. I'm one of the original employees on the show. We are currently on hiatus, which means we're not taping right now, but we go back into production in April. And when we go back into production, it'll be for season 19, which is kind of unheard of in the television business for shows to go that long. To give you a little contrast, the Oprah Winfrey Show went for 25 years. Judge Judy is in her, about to go into her, into her 22nd season. So that gives you just a little contrast with that. But I started my career off, I go back to, I was here, I attended the university here between 72 and 76. Some of you probably already heard this speech because I recognize some of the faces, but my last term of school, we were on, at the time, when I was in school, we were on a quarter system. So there was a fall, winter, and spring, unlike what you have now, which is 2 semesters. And for my spring term, I did an internship at a television station in St. Louis. I'm originally from St. Louis. And that, after that internship for 3 months, I graduated. And that led me to my first job. And it was working in local news in St. Louis. For those of you who are familiar with St. Louis, I worked at Channel 5, which is the NBC affiliate in St. Louis. And I was there I started directing 3 months after I got out of college. Yes, 3 months after college, because internship for 3 months, they hired me as a production assistant, and then I started directing. I'll tell you in a moment what happened after that, but the thing I'd like to emphasize to you now is our internships. I've been saying this all day long. You guys really want to do internships, because those can lead you into your first job. You want to try to get an internship. You want to be a little picky about it if you can. A situation in an area where you think you want to work, because that's up and get your first job. So I highly recommend internships. I also recommend them as close to graduation as possible. Little tricky to do because you guys are on the semester system. I know the curriculum calls for you to do the internships at like summer after your junior year. And that's fine, that's good. What's important after you've done that, particularly if you've had a good experience in the place where you did the internship, you want to keep in touch with, figure out a person or two that you can keep in touch with at the organization. You email them at the end, thanking them. You thank them before you left, but you email them, somewhere along the line, say closer to the holidays, you email them back and say, hey, listen, I'm getting ready to go into my second semester, and I'm just, try to sell yourself a little bit. Doesn't need to be a long email, just a quick little note. As you get closer to graduation, maybe another email. If it's a place that you're going to visit, if it's near your home or something, you're going home for the weekend, you try to stop by. And you want to keep in touch is the point. This can help you if you're trying to get a job in this particular location. If nothing else, you're going to learn quite a bit by doing an internship, which could certainly help you wherever you might try to get that first job. So, to complete that, I worked in St. Louis for 7 years, 7.5 years actually. Started directing right away. Was very blessed and it was just a blessing. That's the only way I can describe it. I then moved to Minneapolis. I lived there for 5 years and directed local news there. And then I got a big break with my career and I moved out to Washington, D.C., where I directed a show called Meet the Press. It comes on Sunday mornings. Worked for NBC News, the network. Did that for a little over 2 years, and then I got a bigger opportunity, and I moved to Chicago. It was the first time I lived in Chicago. This is my second time now. But I directed a show called The Oprah Winfrey Show. And I did that for 3 years. Left Oprah, moved to New York, worked for, did a show you guys are all too young to know about. I've said this speech before. I'm sure you've all heard it. But it's called Rolanda. It was a talk show. Did it for a couple of years. Moved from New York, moved to Houston, Texas. Was in Houston for about 6 months. Did a show that I knew wasn't going to work. They paid me a lot of money. And so that's why I went and did the show. And the show didn't work. And I ended up moving to Los Angeles. And I was in Los Angeles for a year. I did a show called Carol and Marilyn. It was a daytime variety show for ABC. And part of the problem was I came into the show mid-season. The show didn't work. They canceled the show. And the show that took its place was a show called The View. And that obviously is still on the air. And I left New York, left Los Angeles, went back to New York and directed a show called Maury Povich. Did that for a year. I won't get into the story of what happened there other than I ended up leaving Povich and I got the job in Chicago doing Judge Mathis. And I've been there ever since. I've been there for nearly 18 years now. 19, we're on season 19, so a little over 18 years. One thing I might say at this juncture is that, in this business, particularly if any of you are interested, anybody here interested in news? Here's one thing I want to tell you about news, because I worked in news for a while. I know quite a bit about news. You got to move. You got to move. And then you have to move. You got to move a lot. It helps if you have some goals in mind where you might want to get to. You might say to yourself, well, I'd like to get to a big market. But that's going to take some moving around. And if you're willing to do that, you guys are all young. I'm going to assume you're single, and there's no kids. That you can very easily do that. And that will help you grow. And you will. But be willing to move.
What all did you do while you were here at the university?
You guys have a wonderful opportunity here at this. I've had a chance to spend some time with the staff, and let me tell you, you have a first-class staff, and you have resources. You have the equipment. You guys, if you're not, I don't know any freshmen here, sophomores, okay, especially to the sophomores. You guys in the early stages of your college career, I'm going to assume that you're looking to go into broadcasting or film or journalism or whatever, media of some sort. You want to spend some time, a lot of time. You got the station, you got radio, you got all these resources here. Now is the time to be down there experimenting, making mistakes. I had a chance to watch, what was it, Flipside? Is that what it's called? And I was very impressed by something that I noticed, and this is very important. I noticed that when everybody was setting up, because I was just kind of sitting around just watching. You were there. You were there. You were the TD. No, you were the cam guy. And but I noticed that everybody, and I don't know if it's always like this, but I noticed everybody got along real well. Very, very important when you get out in the real world that you're able to work with people, because this can make or break you in certain situations, and you want to be able to, and then it makes the job much more fun. If you get around, you're joking around, you're laughing, hopefully nobody's getting offended by what you're saying, and you can have a good time. But the point being is you have the resources here, and you need to use them. And that's what helped me. That's how I owe my career, I think, to the fact that the school, and at the time, we didn't have many resources, but it was what it was. We took advantage of what we did have, and we were able to have a lot of fun. There's always a small group that's willing to get and do and try experiment with things. The department allowed us to do that, and we did. And we learned from it. And I owe that to when I got into my internship, I showed some promise. And as a result, after that internship, I went to my supervisor and I said, hey, I'm graduating. Is there a job for me? I mean, there was no email back then. And they said, yeah, here I am talking to you.
So you and I have talked that y'all did a daily newscast. You did a children's show called...
Yeah, we did. At the time, we did a live half-hour newscast Monday through Friday. It was on the cable system here at the time. And we did a children's show that aired once a week. It was called Captain Duck. And that was kind of fun. I was sort of the main director. So I got I realized early on in my sophomore year that I wanted to direct, and I really worked towards that, and I did everything I could with that. I ended up creating a talk show called Probe, and it was all students. We had a student host, everything, very much like we were doing on Flipside. It was fun. We had a good time with it. But that was a time to experiment, and I learned a lot from it. And I'll tell you, there were some very practical, basic things that I learned and did that really helped me once I got started, got my foot in the door. But especially with news, because I was doing this newscast. It's about as basic as you could get, but it was the fundamentals, the basics were there, and that's a good thing.
What was the greatest challenge for you when you were doing these things?
Well, I don't. Yeah, that's kind of a tough question. Let me just tell you the one thing that I did that I think was that I also think is very important. When you get into these situations, you really want to be humble. You have to be careful. If there's a challenge, the challenge is knowing where the boundaries lie. You don't want to get too aggressive or too assertive. People tend not to like that. But you got to figure out where those boundaries lie. You don't want to be too buggy, hanging over people's shoulders. The one thing I did in the internship that was very valuable, and I did it after I became a production assistant at the station, is I spent every newscast that they had in the control room. Every newscast in the control room. My schedule allowed me to do that. And I had made it known pretty early on that I was interested in directing, and then of course the opportunity came, and I was off and running. I think a big challenge is not so much your ability to do the job, is how you mesh and get along with people. That is, I can't stress that enough, because if you can get along with people, a lot of my jobs over the years were the result of having worked from people in the past. And I'd have to kind of walk through this a little bit. My job that I got in Los Angeles when we were in Houston was the result of someone I was working with in Houston. They went to the show and they wanted to bring me to the show. My job in New York when I went to do Maury Povich was someone I had worked with on the Oprah Winfrey Show. My job with the Judge Mathis show was a guy who had hired me the first time I went out to do the talk show Rolanda in New York. These were all relationships. I told the story earlier today to a couple of classes about 3 years ago. I got a call. It was in January. I was off. I'm off right now because we're on hiatus. And I get a call, and this person's telling me about this. This is someone I had worked with on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and she's talking to me about this talk show they're going to be doing. I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Sounds really nice." And at the end of the conversation, she says to me, "Oh, by the way, this show is in Abu Dhabi and Dubai." I go, "Oh, wow, that's interesting." And they said, "Well, you want to do this?" I said, "Well, sure." And so I had to have another conversation with some other people who were involved with the show. This all happened within a couple of days. And so they hired me, and like 2 weeks later, I'm on a plane headed over in the Middle East. And it was, it's very different over there. And it was, but it was an incredible opportunity. I was there for 2 weeks. It was great. I just have nothing but great. But this was the result of a relationship that I had with someone I had worked with 20 years ago. And so it's important. I think that if there's a challenge, you want to be able to nurture those relationships. It's very easy to get off track with that. It's very easy to get upset. Television can be very stressful at times, and you can lose your cool. You got to keep your cool. You got to keep your cool. Admit to your mistakes. Admit to your mistakes. Because as soon as you admit to your mistakes, everybody can move on. Because as soon as you start trying to backtrack on how and why something happened, it's a kind of a spiral downhill. Some things aren't always black and white. They're not always that easy to it's not always easy to say, okay, this is what happened. It's pretty obvious what happened. Sometimes a little bit more involved in that. But a lot of times it's just, listen, my fault, I did it, and everybody moves on.
So that kind of answers one of my next questions. What do you think are the top soft skills? So we talk, interpersonal communication, those types of things. What about the hard skills? And we're in a production area. We, as you and I have talked about, we make stuff.
Right.
What hard skills do you think are the most important?
Well, I kind of mentioned a little bit here. Getting along with people, being able to work with people. That's what you're talking about, right? Or
talk more like production skills that they might mean.
Well, production skills. If you want to, whatever you want to do in production, the most effective, what makes you the best person. I say knowledge is power. You want to know as much as you can. Let's say you want to be a director. To be a really good, effective director, you need to understand all the aspects that are involved in a production. You need to know the limitations of the equipment that you're working with. You need to know the limitations of your crew. This is really very important. So here we've got 3 cameras here. That camera's on me probably. This camera's got a 2-shot of both of us, and this camera's going to shoot anybody that gets up and asks a question later. That would be my guess. Do I have that right, guys? Okay, so you want to understand what their parameters are, because that's going to make you an effective director. You want, I think, another important trait for a good director is to be able to listen to their crew, to listen to their people, allow them to give you suggestions, because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be in situations that are, particularly in a live broadcast, that can get kind of tense, and your crew is always, a lot of times, in a position to bail you out or to bail the show out. And you want to be able to. This is an important thing. That's the biggie.
And don't think I didn't notice that there's not a camera on a 1-shot on me. Okay, I did notice it. All right. Let's move forward a little bit. You're working on a project right now. We're going to save this a little bit, but you're working on a project right now. Tell them a little bit about what you're doing with that, and then let's take a look at it, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it.
So I get a lot of time off, and I'm allowed to do freelance stuff. And so I had an idea for it. It happens to be a topic that I'm very passionate about. I sort of live a minimalist lifestyle. I'm into organizing and decluttering. So I had an idea for a show. And what I'm going to show you here pretty soon is a way to how if you come up with an idea, how you might sell it. And but anyway, I had this idea for this, so I went out and I found a host, and I put together a crew. I financed the whole project, and we put together a pilot. And I'm in the midst of trying to sell that right now. Yeah, that's sort of the short version of that whole thing. We can ask questions about it later. Once you see this, you might have some questions. I'm happy to answer it.
Let's
but before we take a look, let's just kind of explain a little bit more. So what this is, it's called a sizzle reel. And what a sizzle is, whenever you're trying to sell a television show, you usually have to do a pilot. And from the pilot, you create a sizzle. Think of it as a movie trailer. And generally what you're going to do with it, you're going to try to tell a little something about the host, a little something about the show and the concept and what you're trying to do. And then at the end, you're going to give some contact information. But here's the trick. It has to be short. Now, what you're about to see is 3 minutes and 10 seconds long. So that's short. And but generally, you don't want to make a sizzle more than 5 minutes. You usually have to do the pilot in order to create the sizzle, because you want to incorporate things from the pilot in the sizzle. other words, some clips from the show, the pilot. You sometimes can create a sizzle without doing a pilot. Harder to sell. Because if they like the sizzle, they're going to want to know, oh, where's the pilot? I like to see that. If you haven't done it, it may not happen. So here's a sizzle. We can talk about it after we watch it, okay?
Who can't relate to opening a drawer, a closet, staring at a cluttered desk thinking, where do I start? What do I keep? What do I toss? And how in the world am I going to find the time? Hi, I'm Shannon Wells, a working mother of 3. I get it. As a news reporter, I learned to think quick on my feet, keeping my thoughts and information organized. At home, I'm always looking for ways to keep things simple, because when we do, we live better, and it's less stress and chaos being organized. Listen, there's no shame in this organization game. Join me on the mission to saying yes to less. Welcome to the show, Simplify. Jesse, come on. You even have your kitchen table?
I know.
Are you kidding me? Cups? You don't have a refrigerator. Is that what's next?
Yeah,
the refrigerator?
pretty much.
This has got to go.
I need your help, Shannon. I told you, I do everything in this room. I don't leave this room.
You've got to be kidding me. It's gotten so bad. You're not even making up your own bed.
I know, and I'm starting not to care, and I hate to say that.
And that's the point where you need my help, because you need to care. You need to care about your space. It is important. Your space is the surrounding, how it makes you feel.
You're right.
It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's how it makes you feel. And when you lay your head down at night, you should feel good. Whether you live in a large home or studio, what you do with your space matters. Every inch can have a purpose. Anyone can do this, and you can actually have fun, but it is a process. People just like you are inviting us into their homes and offices, keeping it real and getting results. We're talking to the professionals, so you don't have to hire one.
Well, first of all, this is not a recommendation of ours because, of course, you want to separate, work from pleasure. And your bedrooms should be a sanctuary. It should be a place where you feel very comfortable and kind of zen-like. And so having your office inside of that space is really not the best option. So the first thing that we would do is look around for another place to relocate the office.
This is more than buying containers, although sometimes it's necessary. Look, we're sharing simple tips and tricks that you can implement today. And we haven't even touched on technology. We live in a time of tablets, smartphones, computers galore, jam-packed inboxes, pictures we've never printed and likely never will print, documents that are eating up storage and driving us crazy. Rebuild your life with a flash drive. Break it all down. Simplify. Okay, enough talking about it. Let's get to work. Enjoy watching Simplify, and remember, we're in this together.
Could use it because her room looks like her closet threw up. Yeah. How'd you make that?
Well, let me say what I did. So I came up with the idea. I found the talent. Shannon, through, I work with a guy on the show I work with now, his wife. And I happened to be at their house one weekend, and we were just talking, and somehow we got on to talking about all this decluttering stuff, and she started telling me about all these little things she does around the house, and she was showing me stuff. And I knew that she'd been a reporter, and she's a mom. She's got 3 kids. She wanted to get back into television, but she's Shannon will kill me, but she's in her mid-30s, and she she wasn't sure how to go about that. She was interested in getting back in the news, and so I went home and I got to thinking about it a little bit. And I thought, and so I called her the next day, and we had to talk about it. And I said, listen, if I put together this show, would you be willing to, host it And so we started to plan it. From the time that I came up with the idea, it took me about 3 weeks, and then we were shooting it. So it all happened pretty fast. I came up with a format, and I hired the crew, people that I knew, people that I had worked with before. I think, what did I tell you, about 8 people? We had 8 people on the crew. We had 2 camera people. I had someone who did audio. I had lighting. I had like a production assistant. I had the woman, Jessie, who was the person with the cluttered place. She was an actress, so I hired her. And I called there's actually a national organization it's called the National Association of Professional Organizers. So I called them. They had a local chapter in Chicago, and I asked them, "Do you have anybody who's interested in doing TV?" And they sent me out this woman who's the professional organizer, and it all came together. We shot it in one day. One day is a typical production day is 10 hours with an hour lunch break. We did it in that amount of time because this was costing me, and I didn't want to go over. And then I had it edited. It took us a couple of weeks to get it edited. That's not like a couple of weeks every day editing on it, but it took about that long before, because I hired an editor to do it, freelance guy. He had other work, but we got it done, and that was the result. We think the show came out pretty well. We did the show based on a half-hour format, and so we're trying to sell it. There you have it.
You and I talked today, and you're probably thinking about, okay, all the equipment that you've used, and what would I need if I were to do something like that, and how could I produce that, and thinking about, okay, so you probably don't own the equipment, so you're going to have to rent it, right? How'd you shoot it? Okay,
let me tell you what happened. So we did this pilot. I told you about the crew I had on the show. So I got approached. They liked by someone who they liked the idea, and they said to me, could you do this and do like tips, little organizational tips? If we were gonna, how on the internet you have these, you watch videos on the internet, little short subjects about whatever the topic is. And so I said, yeah, I can do that. So I came up with a couple of tips that we could do. And so we went back into production. But this time I had one camera person, I had my lighting person, I had the writer, let me make sure I'm not forgetting anybody, myself and Shannon, and that was it. And we did 2 videos. We did them in one day. We did them in about 6 hours in the same location where we did the pilot. That, by the way, was my place. That saved some costs by not going somewhere else. We did that. And then I got to talking with the lighting guy, who was a guy who does the lighting on the show, Judge Mathis, that I work on now. And I said to him, Bill, we got to figure out a way to cut the cost some more. And we got to talking about, you think we could shoot this thing on the iPhone? And I said, we thought, yeah, we could do this. I said, well, we got to do it. We have to do an experiment. So we came up with another topic to do. And we did another tip. I did it in about 3 hours, came back to my place again. But this time I had Bill, the lighting, I had myself, I had the writer, and Shannon and I cut the cost even more. But we shot it on the iPhone. We shot it on I don't know what you guys know about iPhones. We shot it on the iPhone 7 Plus because it has the best camera on it. And it came out really, really well. And the video looks phenomenal. And you can shoot with 4K, which is very good quality. So as you're thinking about your career and you're thinking about what you want to do, you got to start to think a little bit outside the box. You got to think about, the internet's really big now. Everything, at least right now, today, seems to be going towards the internet. I've emphasized this in some of the classes I talked to today. And there's some opportunities there. Some of you are into film. You want to put together a short film. put together a short film. You've got YouTube. You got to get it out there. Internet offers you a distribution vehicle to get your project out there. I mean, there's obviously other things such as film festivals and things for short films. But I didn't mention this in the class, but we've talked about it. There is a mobile network called Go90. It's an app. You should download it. It's a free app. Go90. It's owned by Verizon. You guys know who Verizon is. Go90 is, and I don't claim to know a lot about it, but Go90 is Verizon's mobile network. They've created a mobile network for videos that people want to watch on their phone or their tablet. And it's actually pretty cool. They have a lot of different topics, from sports to dramas to action. I watched a series called Rush based on the video game. It wasn't a video game, it was actually live actors. And it was a 10-part series. It was very good, but each episode was about 10 to 12 minutes long. It was basically an hour and a half or so movie that they cut up. But in each episode, you got a preview of the next episode, and then you got a rehash from the previous episode. But the concept, the ideal is, and what Verizon is banking on is, everybody's going mobile. Everything is going mobile. Can we create this network, sell it? It's all about money, and make it work, and run commercials or ads in it, and we'll have to see if that works. But Go90, free app, unless they're charging for it now. It's free. Okay, still free then. It's interesting. But this is something you want to think about as you guys at some point are going to graduate. You're going to be looking for that first job. There are jobs now that weren't so prevalent a few years ago. They're becoming more and more that involve working for some company that does programming or does something via the internet. You still have your traditional things like your TV stations, your newspapers, your radio stations, I suppose, to some degree. And those are certainly nice traditional ways to try to get a job in those things, production houses. But sometimes you can't go that route. You want to look. You have now another vehicle to look at. One of the things I didn't talk about earlier, where there are jobs, are with corporations. Corporations have audiovisual departments. They hire people. They certainly do. They bring in a lot of freelance people to do various projects, but they usually have a core staff of folks. So that's something to think about in terms of jobs down the road.
It's about 7:30. We talked about we're going to try and go till about 8, but I think Joey will talk as long as you want him to talk. So we're going to open it up now. You guys ask away. This is your time.
Ask questions. Please ask questions. Don't leave me hanging. I flew all the way out here from Chicago. I had to fly into Kansas City, and Joe was kind enough to come pick me up and drive me all the way to Warrensburg.
So one thing that Joe always tells us about, and is always stressing, is know as much as you can about the business. I know for a fact I want to be talent.
Okay.
I want to be a commentator for sports.
Okay.
But he always has me do stuff like work a camera or work a replay or has had me direct and things like that. How important is it, even if you're just looking for one specific job, to know all the other jobs as well?
Well, as I said before, it's all very important. The more knowledge is power. The more you know and understand, as talent, for instance, and talent, I've worked with a lot of talent over the years, and they can be they have their moments. But here's what's important. If you understand technically what's going on, because invariably at some point in time, something's going to go wrong. You're on a live broadcast, particularly if you're doing sports, and something's not going to work. Well, you need to be able to ad-lib. And let me tell you one thing you don't want to do, and talent is very guilty of this, and I think they're guilty of it because they just don't know where to go. So something happens, and they invariably blame it on technical or the crew. Now, it may indeed be that, but it kind of, the crew kind of doesn't like that. They don't like being blamed. So you want to keep it moving. How do you keep it moving? Well, you use your talent as being talent. If you're covering some sport event and it's you start talking about the team. Maybe there was a video clip that was supposed to come up. It didn't come up. It's obvious that it didn't come up. You don't know exactly why it didn't come up. There may be a very reasonable explanation for why it didn't come up. But but because you have a sense of what production is about and what goes in and doing a live broadcast, you just keep, you ad lib. You do what talent does best. You ad lib, you keep it moving like nothing happened. And that time will pass, and maybe they'll get the video back. And they'll let you know. And when they do get it back and they let you know, you'll go back into it. So what Joe told you is absolutely right. And I tell you the same thing. Knowledge is power. You want to know and understand everything. You know what makes a good producer is understanding everything, everything about the production that there can be. You want to know, I say I'm a producer, I want to understand what the director does. Now, you don't have to know how to direct, but you need to have some sense and understanding of what they're doing, because you're going to have problems and issues in production. And if you understand it, and if you've got a good relationship with your crew and with your staff, you can have a discussion quickly, resolve the problem, and keep it moving. You don't embarrass anybody. You keep it moving. This is very, very vital. The best productions I've ever worked on, whenever we had problems, if I had a good group to work with, we were always able to keep it going. Let me tell you a story. I haven't shared the story. It's a very interesting story. So I worked on Rolanda, this talk show in New York. We decided to go to Florida to do a remote, and it was going to be live. Even though it was a syndicated talk show, there were certain stations where we could air it live. So, of course, we did it live, but it was going to be the tape version that stations who ran it later in the day were going to be able to use. We were down in Miami, and we were going to do a show on the Cuban. At the time, the Cuban refugees were coming over from Cuba, and they were coming over on inner tubes and things like, and really makeshift rafts, kind of dangerous. And so we had done a show in, what part of Florida? It was up in Pensacola a couple of days before on an abortion clinic that had been bombed. And we had gone into a hotel, into the ballroom, and we set up the way we did the set, because you're trying to do these things on the cheap. We had seating, and we kind of did it in a round, like in theater. So we had a group of seats here, and here, and the talent and the guests were in the middle. And then when they asked questions, they would, they'd go to the different areas covered, and it worked out really well. So we got down to Florida, and we were going to do the same thing. We had a little problem. The problem was we didn't have the bodies. For whatever happened, they couldn't get the audience. We had an audience, but it wasn't big enough to do it in a round. Okay, now I got a problem. The problem is I'm going to get ready to go live. The problem is I don't have a background. My background was going to be the audience. I don't have it. We're going live. We're going live in a half hour. We're going live in 20 minutes. We're going live in 15 minutes. Executive producers looking at me. What are we going to do? I got it covered. What we did was we had what we were going to do. We had gotten a bunch of live plants, trees, and we used them to sort of fill in the gaps from the different sections. So we just had something to show. I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take those trees. We're going to take all of them. We're going to lay them down so they're flat. And we're going to stack them up against each other. We had about 3 guests, so I didn't need a lot of background. And that became our background. We improvised, and it worked. It worked so well, in fact, the owner of the company, of the production company, the show was done with King World. King World does Jeopardy. They do Wheel of Fortune. I think they do Jeopardy too. They distribute it. And so we got a call from the president of the company, because he knew we were out in this remote. And he said, boy, you guys did a great job with that. And I got to tell you, I really love that background. We thought it was kind of funny. But that's the kind of thing that you want to be able to do. You got to, and I had figured out about 45 minutes before we were going to go on, what I could do. I didn't say anything because there was some hope that the audience was going to arrive, and it got to be a half hour. And I thought, should I put those trees down now? But I knew how much time I had to make it happen. And the stage crew that we had there, they set it up within minutes. It was quick. It was real quick, and it worked.
I noticed you said that you were blessed to be able to have your first directing job, like 3 months or so after you were done.
After I officially graduated from here, yeah.
So what were some things like kind of before that you did an internship like that prepared you? Because I'm in the stage where I'm getting ready to go into an internship, but I don't really know what to expect, like because I do a variety of different things.
Sure.
So what are some things that helped you like make the transition from the internship to the directing job?
Well, first of all, let's back up to the internship. The internship, usually the company that you're working for is going to dictate a little bit about what you do. Where you need to take advantage of the internship is you need to start to kind of hone in areas of your interest and maybe spend a little extra time. Maybe it's after you get off. What we did on our show, we had interns on the Judge Mathis show, and what we did was we allowed the interns to, like, if they wanted to observe editing, they could go into the edit rooms. They can come into the control room. They were usually busy on tape days, but we allowed time at some point where they could come in and watch. When we tape Judge Mathis, we don't tape shows, we tape cases. And so we allow them to come in and watch us, do a couple of cases. And then we would, we'd ask them, where are you interested? What do you want to do? We let them shadow a producer. And so that's kind of part of what you want to do. Now, if you're lucky enough to get that first job, you're going to probably if you get that job as a result of that internship, you've probably established an area where you're interested, and they're going to, obviously they had an opening, and they're going to put you in that position. If you want to grow from there, you got to let them know. And you don't have to, it's subtle. You have plenty of opportunities. You'll be around people. You'll know who to say that to and who not to say that to. And if you show promise, and I'd like to think that I did, then they will, and if you're humble's another key word, you'll move forward. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, sir. Wait for the microphone.
So you mentioned that you're on hiatus right now.
Yes.
So what's your work schedule like then? Do you, like, I know some like the sports people, like they work by event or whatnot. So you said you shoot by episode or case. So how does that work?
Also, okay, let me, again, some of you, probably most of you, I don't remember everybody who was in every class, but most of you may have heard this. I get a lot of time off. I'm off 10 and a half months a year. You got that? I am off 10 and a half months a year. That's a lot of time, right? It hasn't always been that way. That happened about, and I always forget the timeline. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. It wasn't more than 4 years ago. I haven't told the story. I'm going to tell the story. How did this happen? Part of my responsibility on the Judge Mathis show, not only directing the show, but I was also involved in the edit process. Now, what does that mean? I didn't physically edit. We tape cases, and then cases are later put together to make up a show. We use 3 or 4 cases to make up a show. We tape over 500 cases in a production season, and I'll tell you how that works here in a moment. We do a total of 150 shows per season. And so my job was not only to direct the show, but once the show has been edited, it goes through several different people to look at it, and they're all looking at different things before it goes out. It always came to me first, and I looked at it not from an editorial point of view, because that's not what I do. I looked at it from a production point of view. We ISO all the cameras when we tape. We ISO all the audio when we tape. We tape the cases live to tape, so I'm calling shots, take 1, take 2, all this stuff. We use 6 cameras on the show. And so I would look at it from a production point of view. Making sure there were no jump cuts, making sure I liked the transition from, I had enough familiarity with the cases, and we always have to edit these cases on some level, that I knew when there were edits and that kind of thing. Not that you can hear it. I was looking for that too. Was it a clean edit? Was it not? And then I would make notes. I'd hand it back to the editors, and they'd clean it up. And then we sent it off to the next person. The next person who was going to watch it was watching it from an editorial point of view. So you wanted to have it as clean as possible when they were watching it, so they're not distracted by some technical issue. Did that for years. We've been doing the show. As I say, we're getting ready to go to season 19. So they came to me, I don't know, season 12, 13, whatever it was. And they said, hey, we would like to cut your pay. And I said, oh, how does that work? And that was, I have to tell you, that was motivated by something. It was motivated by me going to them at some point, not to by the time they came to me with it, I had recently gone to them and said, hey, listen, I want to do some other things on my hiatus, as long as it doesn't interfere with the show. You guys have a problem with this? And they said, well, let's think about it. So they then came back to me and said, hey, listen, if you want to do this, we're good to let you do this, to do some other things, but we're going to have to cut your pay. And I thought, okay. Now, they had selfish reasons for asking that, too. They were looking to cut back their budget on the show. And I came along at the opportune time and presented this to them. And it all worked. Well, my boss felt really bad about it because she thought it should be fine as long as it didn't interfere with the show, that I go and do these other things that I wanted to do. I didn't have this laundry list of things I wanted to go do. I just wanted to have the opportunity to sort of look around a little bit. I had nothing immediate that I was planning on going to do. And she said to me, she said, listen, you know what? We've been doing this show for a long time. I'm going to take you out of the edit mix because I think it's wrong. She didn't like how much they were cutting from my salary. And so she said, but I'm going to take you out of the edit mix. You only have to be here on days that we tape. And that's how I ended up with this 10.5 months off. And when she told me that, I go, oh, well, that's good. And so the way our production season works, we usually start sometime in mid-April. We go until the week before Thanksgiving. We tape usually Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, 3 days a week, every other week. So I get every other week off between mid-April and the week before Thanksgiving. And then we take 6 weeks off in the summer where we're dark, we're not taping. I get those 6 weeks off. I'm off every Friday of the weeks that we tape because we only tape Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we're on hiatus the week before Thanksgiving until we come back in mid-April. It's about 5 months. It adds up to about 10.5 months, give or take a couple of days. And so what do? I go in on the Monday, the first day of the week that we're going to tape. There's some prep work I do. I'm usually there for a couple of hours. An hour that is usually socializing. And it takes me about an hour to do the prep work I have to do. Now, I can do the prep work on Tuesday when I come in, but it's just easier on me if I come in the day before and take care of it. We have a rundown that we put together for the crew. There's specific things I like to have on the rundown. So I go through the schedule of what we're going to, because by then I know what order the cases are going to be happening in, and we put together that rundown. So when I come back in on Tuesday, we're all ready to go. And so we tape. Tape days tend to be long. They're unpredictable. We don't know how long they're going to last. I'm usually there on a good day, 12 hours. On a bad day, 14, 15. That's a little unusual. Probably average 11 to 12-hour days. And Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Usually Thursday we finish a little sooner than the rest of the days. We tape 12 cases a day. And the reason why we're finished sooner is because the judge, he doesn't live in Chicago, he lives in Los Angeles, and he wants to get out of there. And so he tends to get things, because he can drive, and he tends to get through things a little quicker. And that's it. That's how it works. Man, the camera guy's got a question.
I just wanted to ask about the show that you showed us.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I just wanted to ask about the show that you showed us.
Yes. Yeah.
About how much did it cost?
I'll tell you exactly what it costs. Would you like to know that? To put together the pilot. Let me ask, what do you think it cost? Let me review for you again. 2 camera people, audio person, actress, writer. I'll give you a little hint. The host and myself didn't get paid anything. I had a production assistant. Okay, I had those people. The equipment was provided, and a lighting person. The equipment was provided by one of the camera guys had all the equipment, and he supplied the audio person and the other camera person for me. He has his own little production company. The lighting guy had his own equipment. The production assistant didn't need any equipment. The actress didn't need any equipment. I had some catering. So I had food there in the morning when they came in, and then I had lunch brought in later. And we did it in my place. What do you think it cost? Throw out some numbers. How much? 20? Okay. 10? How much? 5,000. If you do a talk show pilot in a studio where you need lots of people, you have to build a set, and you got to pay all this crew, and you got to bring in food. A lot of money to do a talk show pilot. It can run, and the numbers can really vary. They're all over the place depending on we're talking 100,000, couple of 100,000. It can be very expensive. But they do try to do pilots on the cheap. Part of the pilot is also doing the sizzle. They always do a sizzle because the production company has to take it and sell it. They're usually not paying the talent, but they got to pay everybody else. And when you do a talk show pilot, you're basically on a 1 hour show. This was done based on a half-hour show, plus the sizzle. How much do you think it cost? You want to revise your numbers? How much? Okay. Now, this came out of my pocket. I'm not a rich guy. I have 2 children. One in college, sophomore. My daughter's a senior in high school. She's going to college in the fall. 50. I'll stop this. I had a little fun with that. It humors me. It cost me a little over $14,000 to do. And the way I made it work was all the guys who work for me. I've worked with all of them on Mathis. I've been in Chicago for a long time. I said, you guys owe me some favors. And so I paid them well, but they all cut their rate just a little bit. Had I paid everybody their rate, I might have spent about $16,000 for it, a little bit more. Again, we did it in one day. I had it laid out because I do understand production. This is what helps with understanding production. If you understand all the aspects of production, then you know where all the corners can be cut, and you can do it very efficiently. I knew, and this was a tight ship, and we all had a lot of fun. Now, the 2 tip videos I did those. I had 1 camera, 1 lighting, writer, myself, and Shannon, the host. Shannon and I did not get paid. So it was just the other 3 people. That cost me about $2,500 for 2 tips. And this is product that I could sell, that I could use. It's ready to go now. When I went back and used the iPhone, and we did the 1 shoot, lighting, writer, Shannon, and myself. That's it. I did it for about $1,200. Kept cutting the cost. There you go. Now you know the numbers. What else you want to know? Yes, sir. Wave the mic.
When you make something, like when you produce like content, like I want to know like how you would go about marketing
the product. I'm glad you asked. That's a good question. If you notice at the end of the sizzle, you saw 2 names come up. Did you notice that? My name was one of them, And there was a guy, title was agent, my agent. I have an agent. And he is marketing it for me. He has contacts. I've been with him for a number of years. He's shopping around, but we're being very selective how we shop it around. Where would be an obvious network to run this kind of a show? You have any idea? There's an obvious place to run it. HGTV is the obvious place. We haven't gone to HGTV yet. There's a reason we haven't done that. The reason is I feel, and I've been pressing on this all day, and now maybe you guys will have understanding why I've been pressing. I think that the internet is the next, that's where it's all going. And we wanted to try broadcasting syndicated television, which is what HGTV does. It's a weird environment. It's hard to explain. People get they really want control, for lack of a better term. And we feel like because the internet is the future, and because it seems like as time goes by, there are more avenues to be able to sell this kind of thing on the internet. Problem is, you may not make as much money. But I have no idea what I can sell this thing for. But what I do know is I figured out a way to cut the cost. And I did it because I figured we could do this tips thing with the iPhone. I proved that I could do it, and we did it, and it worked. And but things like this Go90 network that I mentioned earlier, and I mentioned them too in part earlier because we're in discussions with them right now. But this is where we think we can sell it and do it, and I think we're gonna make it. I think we're gonna make it work. If that doesn't work, then we're going to approach an HGTV, or there's a few other networks we can approach with that too. Yes. Go ahead. You, Red. Oh, you got to wait for Mike. Sorry.
Sorry. Okay. So I know you worked in news before.
Mm-hmm.
What are your personal pros and cons about working news production?
I like news. I started my career in news. I enjoy news. You know what I like about news? News is live. You do it and you're done. And there's no editing. There's no, you made whatever mistakes you made. Whatever happened. You move on. Tomorrow's another day. That is the thing I liked about news. The other thing I like about our business, you don't have to wear a coat and tie. That may sound kind of funny, but dress is pretty loose. I go to work like this. I had a great time in news. I had a great experience. Yeah, but the one thing you need to understand about news, it's really changing because of the technology. Now, if you start out in a small market, and here again, this is why you want to know, you guys have the resources here. If you wanted to be a reporter in news, and you were willing to move to a small market after college, you have the resources here at this university that will teach you to what's going to be expected in a small market. What's going to be expected is you're going to be a reporter. You're going to go out and you're going to write you're going to find the story, or they're going to assign you the story. You're going to have to write it. You're going to have to, let me go in order. You're going to have to shoot it. So you know how to run the camera or a camera. You might have to it might be just B-roll. Maybe it's a fire or an accident or something, but it's probably someone you got to talk to. So you got to know how to put that camera on the tripod, or be behind the camera, ask the question, let the person answer it. And then you're going to have to take it, write the story, and then edit the story to the video that you shot. And that's how it's all going to happen. You can learn that right here. And if you get put in that situation, believe me, you're not going to be, you might be a little fidgety about it at first, but it's not going to be something that's so foreign to you. Technology has really changed news because a lot of stations now, they have, particularly on the technical side, they have less people, robotic cameras, servers. You're not using, when you shoot stuff, you shoot it on some video card. You're not putting it on videotape anymore. So there's no tape operator. There are no camera people. They have systems now in a lot of stations where the control room consists of the producer and the director. and it's the teleprompter and the cameras and the graphics. They're all in a some kind of computer system, some kind of software system, and news is very formatted, so people aren't moving around a lot. The weather person maybe moves around a bit, but shots can be set up, and then you put on your newscasts. But what you're looking for if you're going into news, you want to know how to do it all. The more you know, the more marketable you're going to be. It gets a little different as you get into the larger markets. Then you might, if you go out in the store, you're probably going to go out with a photographer, but certainly not in the smaller markets necessarily.
So you talked a lot about being on the Judge Mathis show.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I love watching shows like that. And the one question I always have whenever I do see those, how do you find those people? Is there...
I can tell you that.
Yeah, I'm very curious how that happens. And when you do, are there ever days where you think it's going to be an exciting case and it's just a dud? And if it is...
Oh, yeah. We have that all the time. Did anybody get this explanation earlier when I talked about how you were in the class when I explained how that we get these cases? So this is pretty much basically how all these daytime court shows work. You go to sue somebody. Joe's going to sue me. Joe's going to sue me because my dog got into his rose bushes. I had this example earlier, Joe, so you know where the story's going. And I live in this neighborhood, and I'm just kind of a grouchy guy, and I don't care. So the dog got in there, big deal. Well, Joe has pictures of my dog, maybe in the rose bushes, or the dog roaming around, not fenced in, not on a leash. Joe decides to sue me, so he goes down to the local court and files a suit, a small claims. Because his rosebush garden he put together cost him $1,000. Joe has the receipts. Joe knows the neighbors who know that I'm kind of a mule, if I can use that analogy. Is that okay? And so Joe, he sues me. So now, as soon as he filed that claim within his local court, it becomes public record. We have a staff of stringers around the country. We get cases from all around the country. They go into the courthouses in the major markets, and they pull these cases, and they send them to us. All the shows do it. They get whatever cases they get, they send them. We have someone there who goes through these cases. We have a staff of producers. You get this stack, you get this stack, you get this stack, you get this stack. Start calling people. It's all public record. The numbers are there. The phone numbers are there. So you call the parties. You know why they're suing, but you don't know the backstory. So Joe may have all sorts of knowledge about my antics in the neighborhood, but the producer will find that out as they talk to Joe. Of course, I have my side of the story. They're going to call me, and I'm going to talk about them. So they're going to convince us both to come on the show, because the producer's job is to convince the parties to come on the show. How do you get them to come on the show? Now here's the hook. No, that's not how you get it. Well, kind of, sort of. The show pays for the judgment. So if Joe wins, we're going to pay him. I'm not going to have to pay him. He's going to get paid by the show. And we pay within 30 days of appearing. Not when it airs, because we could tape it today and it doesn't air until 6 months from now. So in 30 days, if Joe has proven his case and he wins, we're going to send him his check for $1,000. What happens to me? I'm off the hook. If you go down to your regular small claims court, you sue somebody and you win a judgment, there's no enforcement really. What does happen is they put it on your credit report. Most of these people have bad credit to begin with. Or if you own property, they put a lien on your property, which is going to go on your credit. And maybe one day I sell my property and they look at the liens on it, and then Joe gets his money. But most of these people don't own property. That's how we get them to come on. The other part of that is because of the competitiveness with all these other court shows, a few years ago, we had to start offering an appearance fee. And basically what an appearance fee is depending on how good your story is, we'll pay anywhere from $100 to $500 to get you to come on the show. We fly you in, we put you up, and we have a car pick you up at the airport. We put you up in a hotel. We give you a per diem for food, and then we get you back to the airport and send you on your way. We keep everybody separate hotels, separate flights. It's a juggling act. When you're bringing in 12 cases, 36 cases a week. Well, in theory, a lot of people who sue people know people already. There's been some prior relationship. They may have dated. They may have lived together, roommates. And some things are bitter and, can be a little volatile. We do get some of that, but not too much. There you go. Now you know all the secrets. That's right. More questions? You should ask questions. Let me give you another little hint. Career tip. Maybe you're going to get somebody else. I don't know everything. You're going to get somebody else in here at some point. Ask. You're going to get a professional. You're going to ask questions. Don't be shy about stuff. Ask some questions, because this is going to help you. Somebody else can come in here and have give you some tips or whatever you want to call it about getting your first job. And they may tell you something I didn't tell you, and you go, God, well, I didn't know that. So if you got some questions, now's the time. Listen, I'm here. I got nothing going on. When I'm done here, Joe's going to take me back to the hotel. I'm going to sit and watch some TV. I don't know what's on tonight, but I'm going to watch some TV on the cable they have in the hotel. And then tomorrow at some point, he's going to take me to the airport. I'm going to go home.
I'm going to prime you real quick. And those of you who have heard him already know that I'm not just asking him to say this, but talk a little bit about writing.
Writing. Yes, writing. I said earlier, knowledge is power. Writing is very, very, very important. I don't care what aspect of TV you go into. Obviously very important in news, but very, very important in production overall. You got to know how to write. I can't tell you how many people we're up against. Our show is not scripted, but there's a great deal of writing involved with it, because the producers have to pre-interview the litigants and find out what their story is. And their witnesses, sometimes they have to write about what their story is. Now, they're not having to write about it in a newspaper format or in a television news type format, but you got to write it so it makes sense, because the judge, at some point gets the material and is looking over the material, and he needs to understand what's going on with the case. So you got to know how to write. Writing is so, so crucial, particularly if you want to be a producer, or if you want to do your own little short film, and especially if you want to get into news, if you want to do commercials. Writing is very, very important, and it's really vital to the job. The more skill that you have, listen, if you can produce, which means let's review it again, which means having an understanding of the production. If you can write, if you can edit, if you can shoot, there's a lot of freelance stuff going on out there. You sell you're the whole package. And you can go into something and be very comfortable in knowing that, hey, listen, I can do this for you. I can do it all. Or I can do two of them, because all you need is two, because you have the other. And that makes you very, very valuable. So, yes, writing is very, very important.
In relation to because you started to touch on my question, like at the end about being a jack of all trades. Mm-hmm. What would you offer to someone who wants to be a jack of all trades but can't figure out what to promote or push that himself, herself as? Because you can't just walk up to somebody, at least I don't think so, and say, I can do it all. Like, it's kind of, you got to peel back layers, I feel like.
Here's the hard part, and I don't have a magic answer to this question. At some point, you've got to decide which direction you're going to go. And this is why I say where you're here now is important, because it allows you to experiment and to do things. And hopefully by the time you're about ready to graduate, you've honed in on what you're really interested in. When I was in school, we didn't have edit opportunities. There was no edit base. There was no edit system. There was no Apple computer. There was no Final Cut Pro. There was none of all this stuff that exists nowadays. So editing, learning about it really wasn't an option. There was no editing class. There was a film class where we learned a little bit about editing, but there wasn't what you have now. But at some point, you kind of got to figure it out. That's the best way I can answer that.
So I'm going back to the whole writing thing because
Sure.
I was dogged about this
Sure.
on me for years. So what part of the writing are you talking about? Are you talking about grammatically, AP style, or creatively, like in the writing aspect?
It would depend on what the job is, but you would need to be really aware of all those things just to give yourself flexibility in knowing what to do. I don't know how writing is taught here. I know there's a journalism class, and you're going to learn that. Yes, creative writing is also very important, and any form of writing that there is, at some point, there's a high probability that you're going to be called on to do some writing. And a lot of people, they do a lot of writing. It depends on where you went to high school. A lot of writing is done in some high schools and not so much in others. And one of the biggest complaints that I've heard from I've talked to a lot of students over the years, were the fact that they got into college and they didn't realize how much writing they had to do. Don't you guys have to write papers at some point? Right? Okay. No, that's writing. You gotta write a resume. You gotta maybe send a cover letter. You have to, some jobs will ask you, depending on the job, particularly if it's a writing type job, they may have you, write me something. They may give you the subject to write about. Write me something. Put you on the spot. You want to know it all. He told you the right thing. Don't fight it. I'll tell you a little secret. I'll make a little confession for you. I'm a lousy writer. But I don't have to write what I do. So I don't really care. And for my pilot, I hired a writer because I knew I wasn't any good at it.
But you knew what the good writing was.
I do. I can recognize good writing. And I thought, that whole sizzle was written. Somebody wrote that. I thought she did pretty good. You like her? Are you sure you like her? You're not just saying that, right? You like that? Okay. Okay, good.
So, kind of keeping up with the writing that we've been talking about, the two of us are producing a show for Game Melissa's Twitch channel.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also one of the hosts on it. And what I've kind of run into is, for me, it's very hard to balance that act of, like we know what we're going to say going in,
Mm-hmm.
but like how much we need to be writing that out so that
how much
we
is
know what we're
scripted?
gonna say, but also keeping that certain natural
What's the show? What kind of format is it?
It's called Sidetracked, and basically the two of us, me and the other host Leah, we're on there. We'll do a little album review or a segment at the start where we talk about something, just the two of us. Then we bring local musicians on, interview them, and have them play to close it out.
Well, that sounds like most of that is sort of an ad lib kind of a situation anyway. But even in those kinds of shows, you need a certain amount of scripting, usually for the introduction of what today's show is going to be about. Good morning, everybody, or good evening, everybody. We're going to be talking about blah, blah, blah today. Maybe what they call teases to commercial. Do you take a break in the show? You might want to say, listen, when we come back, we're going to get into more discussion about this, this, and this. You may have an idea when you put together your format for your particular show, about what you want to talk about in each segment. So you want to promote what you're going to be doing in the next segment. Now, what makes or breaks or makes you good or not so good at with that job, it might be that in that segment, you were talking about something that was so interesting that you want to carry it over into the next segment. So what you wrote to get into the next segment may not work, in which case you need to take your talents and ad-lib something to get you into that next segment. You may want to script your end of your show. Thank you for watching us tonight. Next week we're going to be talking about this. So there's some scripting, but very limited. But it has to be written, or should be. That answer the question? Good. You're all set now. You're good, right? Good. Great. Yes, sir.
So one thing I think you're going to be coming to see tomorrow is a radio show that we do called Campus Chatter.
Am I doing it tomorrow? Okay. All right.
That's what I was told.
All right. Good. Yes. Okay.
But one of the things that we do it's a sports talk show and all that.
Mhm.
Something that Joe says to us a lot is make sure you do something that's relevant to your audience.
That's
My
true.
partner and I, and a big thing of our show, we're both wrestling fans. We do wrestling.
Sure.
It's part of our show.
Okay.
And he said to us many times, I don't know how many people are going to listen to it or want to, listen to that part. How important is it to those still appeal to the lowest common denominator? I mean, because you're gonna have people that are baseball fans, you're gonna have people that are football fans, and you're gonna have like a smaller section that are, less mainstream sports fans. How important is it to appeal to every single demographic?
Well, I wish you hadn't asked many questions.
I retract what I just
I don't know that I have a magic answer to it. The reality is some people are interested in, if you're a basketball fan and you like baseball, for instance, but you're not real crazy about football, no, you're probably not going to listen to a show about football. You got to get creative. What's creative? You're talking radio now, so we're not dealing with pictures. We're just talking, listen to you talk. Oh, I thought you said it was a radio.
It's a radio show also.
Oh.
But it's a radio show.
Oh, okay. Well, you got. Oh, right, that kind of thing. Oh, okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. You just got to get a little creative. Maybe it's maybe you guys do the show and you got wrestling outfits on. I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe it's like to see.
Well, yeah, that might be a little interesting. People might get some fun out of that. Just got to get creative with it. You seem like a pretty animated guy. You like to talk. You sound like a sports guy.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you got to have the energy and you put it out there. Where you get creative is in your conversation about, talk about wrestling on a level that that's not normally talked about. You would know more about it than I do. If you're in a wrestling, I don't know anything about wrestling. But you got to come up with some creative conversation, not whatever the typical conversation is about wrestling.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do. Did that help?
Yeah.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Kind of piggybacking off of TZ's question with the audience, how do you guys go about finding the information of like who your targeted audience is and like how well your ratings are, or like that kind of
ratings? Shows live and breathe off of ratings. We do all of our ratings and with all these shows, it's handled usually on a corporate level. They do focus groups. You guys know what focus groups are? And those focus groups are usually done initially. So you kind of know what direction you might need to go with the show. You build up a certain audience over time. So the ratings can give you information about where your Judge Mathis is, and it'd be, if you watch the show, it is very obvious, very popular in urban communities. I'll tell you something, you've got social media now, and you can use that. I was telling Joe a story yesterday about Mathis. The show has a Facebook account. We do things on Facebook regarding the show. But whenever we do anything, occasionally we put personal stories in regards to him on the account, the numbers jump. They go off the chart, apparently, because people are kind of interested in, him and his personal life. He's got 4 children. They're all out of college. He only had one of them that went into television, the youngest one. And so that's kind of what we do. As a show, the people work, we don't really get involved in that. There might be some edict that comes down and says, hey, you guys need to start doing this. And we do it. Does that help or answer a question? Kind of? Okay.
Okay. So I want to be a live director for studio.
Oh,
today.
okay. I can give you a lot about that.
Well, that's what I like to do. Is there anything that you can tell me about that, or how I might be able to improve my own skills in?
What year are you in here?
I'm working on sidetrack.
I know, but what year are you in school?
I'm a junior.
Okay.
I'm a junior, but I have 3 semesters left.
Okay.
To think about.
You have opportunities here to direct in
Yes.
programs?
Yes.
Have you been using those opportunities?
I am. Every
You need to
opportunity
keep-
I get.
You need to keep doing that. You need to do that internship. It's that simple. And try to understand, I don't know what your knowledge is of production and all the various aspects of it, but you need to hone that in. What makes an effective director is understanding the limitations of the production that involves the crew, and involves the equipment. It also helps, you want to get a little bit more detail. It involves the sets. Sets have certain limitations. Let me give you an example. You guys have, and I don't say this to be critical, what was the show? I want to get the name today.
Flipside.
Flipside. You have a small studio. You have 3 cameras. You're limited on your lighting. And you got everybody up against the background on that set. You're going to create more shadows. And that's okay. That's okay. But what you need to understand is, how could I go about eliminating that kind of a problem? And I may not be able to do it here, or maybe I can experiment. Maybe someone will let me come in and take a camera, and I'll get somebody to sit in a chair. But instead of having them right this distance from the background, I just want to see what happens if I pull them a little further away from that background and then put some lights on them. What does that do to the shadows?
It will make the shadows.
Exactly. You know that. That's a good thing. So, again, you're here. It's time to experiment, figure it out, ask some questions, and because that's going to help you later. Trust me, once you get out, and the opportunity will open up for you to do this. Let me give you one other thing. And I said I wasn't going to say this, but I've decided to say this because we have a small group. You people will be very successful because you're interested in getting involved and working it, making the mistakes, coming up with ideas. I'm sure Joe and these guys would allow you guys to, if you had some idea that you wanted to do something, maybe it was a little bit kind of off what you typically do, as long as it doesn't create any legal, I'm not trying to put you guys on the spot, as long as it doesn't create any legal problems for you or anything like that, they would allow you to do it. But you need to come up with it. Come up with it as a group. Say, hey, listen, we want to do a program. We want to do this with the program. I want to do a talk show on this topic in our studio with the 3 cameras. But you know what? I don't want to use any of the flats, the backgrounds, because I think that'd be kind of cool. How do I like that? Okay? You figure it out. There's a way to do it. That's what you got to do. That's, again, it's you're fine-tuning your skill. You're in a good place because you know that's something you want to do. And there are opportunities out there. There are opportunities, not just working in news. You go to work for someone like ESPN, sports. They do all these sports programs. They have directors for those. So there's a lot of stuff to do. There's a lot of, what's the Fox? What is the sports up in Kansas City? Yeah, do they have directors and stuff for things? Those kinds of things. You start thinking about it a little bit outside the box. As you get in your senior year, you need to start thinking about where you might go. You got an internship coming up this summer?
I think so. Yes, I'm in contact with somebody in Springfield right now.
Okay, so then I hope
Production house.
that'll be great. Will the production house, do they do directing stuff?
They majorly do like commercials.
It's a different type of directing.
It's different. It's not really where I want to go.
You want to do multi-camera.
Yes.
Maybe, can you look somewhere else? Is it too late for that?
I'm applying everywhere I can.
Where are you from?
I'm from Lee Summit.
Okay, there's nothing up in Kansas City?
I'm applying everywhere I can find. I'm very serious.
There's got to be something up in Kansas City. Yeah. I'm not saying don't do Springfield. I'm just saying, you know what you want to do. Maybe you need to try to get in a place that does what you want to do, if that's at all possible. Again, knowledge is power. I wouldn't turn down the Springfield thing if you can't get anything else, because that's information you'll learn to maybe be able to do something with. And you may decide to change directions a little bit when you do. Could happen.
We're meeting Thursday, right? Oh, we're meeting soon, and we'll talk about this. Okay. All right. We got to thank Joey for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tracy Bai, who was also one of our alums, she used to work in alumni development. She actually is now working nonprofit. She contacted me last semester, told me about Joey, said you need to reach out to him. We got together. I've been looking forward to this. This has been in the works since
back
November.
in the fall. Yeah, late
somewhere
fall.
like that.
Sure.
So I've been looking forward to this day for a long time. Thank you all for coming. We're not leaving right now. If you do have other questions that you want to ask, then
come up and ask
come on
me.
up. And,
you don't want to do them in public. You want to do it privately because you're embarrassed and all that stuff.
All right.
All right.
Thank you all.
Good luck to you all, okay? You guys are going to do well. My kids will be working for you, although none of them are going in the TV, I don't think.
Before you guys leave, please come up and sign in your name. I'd like to send you a note. Okay.
Yes, pleasure to meet you.